All right, welcome to this presentation about page design, layout, and composition in visual storytelling. One of my favorite examples of a graphic novel's page design is Good Talk, a memoir in conversations. This is a story that Mira Jacob writes and illustrates. It's a graphic novel style memoir that captures some of the uncomfortable and poignant conversations in her life, including many with her son, who's mixed race, East Indian and white. Jacob's East Indian parents had an arranged marriage, and she comes to terms with her own ability to build a love marriage, as well as how her parents' relationship changes when they fall in love with each other after decades of marriage. Eventually, Jacob marries Jed, a Jewish man. They both have their own set of cultural norms from either side of their family, and they squabble with each other's parents at times, especially when Jed's family continues supporting Donald Trump. Although this raises challenging questions from their son, Jacob says this about difficult conversations. You do have to figure it out. It is shameful. It is painful. Keep going. So they get through those conversations as always, even when they don't go perfectly. The emphasis when Mira Jacob draws is not usually on the expressions of the characters so much as their position in the frame. Jacob will make the characters change size or distance in between them, between different frames to denote pauses, strong emotion, hesitation, confusion, or drama. She spreads the word balloons apart for thoughtfulness and packs them in close, filled with words when someone's been holding in their thoughts and feelings for too long or if they hit a breaking point. Throughout the memoir, humor and emotion connect us to family archetypes and apply them to race in ways that aren't always talked about on the surface. Conversations with children can especially help us dissect and understand prickly topics in life because they make us think in unexpected ways. The author's son Z asks many of the provocative questions that trigger other memories from her past and present that she builds in the story. Themes include navigating difficult truths, the complexity of race and relationships, sticking it out through hard conversations with family, prejudice and assumptions about people, and who we are in the face of all this. Jacob's style consists of simple illustrated characters that look like collage cutouts with photographic backgrounds. She's illustrated her main characters at different ages with different outfits and hairstyles and uses those to contextualize her speech bubbles, which carry the storytelling weight of most of the pages. The characters often go back and forth in a conversation several times in one page. Sometimes there's no character illustration on the page at all, or just one for each character. The story begins when Z starts to ask some unusual questions. He's getting obsessed with Michael Jackson, and he's asking about why people look the way they look, how they feel about each other, and if they have fear or trust for one another. Jacob has difficulty explaining that because she wants to say something that makes him feel okay, but the world is not always a place that makes you feel okay. She wants him to be ready for that, but dreads breaking those childlike illusions he has. She says, part of the reason I drew a book about this is because nobody wants to talk about it. And yet, this is my life. This is my son's life. In this page, Jacob creates a gulf of negative space between her son's question about white people's fear of brown people. He asks, did anyone ever try to hurt you? And her answer, which is not really. She fills that negative space with white text that tells the truth that she didn't really feel like she could say to her son because he was too young. She says, I have had this with my own parents, moments where they tried to glaze over something, where I felt the kind of weird rubble of the truth underneath it. And I know that I would lose a little bit of trust in them. But what do you say to your 6-year-old son in that moment? Here's how Mira Jacob uses her visuals to communicate a conversational and power imbalance in this scene. It implies a distinction in treatment, prejudice, and white people's unawareness of how their words are being received. Jacob's character and her friends don't say anything in these 2 pages, but we still have some idea of how this conversation made them feel because of the visual storytelling. Alienated, overlooked, talked over, despite everyone in the conversation's general agreement on the major point that Donald Trump sucks. The women of color start off here in the foreground, and the narration provides a perspective that actually feels kind of ironic when you read the whole pages. It says everyone had a theory about Donald Trump's primary victory. It's suggested that the white characters in this scene do feel like everyone has had their turn to speak, but they haven't noticed who's been pushed aside from the conversation, as the women of color are shrinking completely into the background. They're not even visible in the last frame, and all the white characters are looking into the camera. They have nothing left to say, but they're still blocking in the space. Jacob draws a comparison with that scene by using the same technique in a conversation with her husband. So she's getting ready for a professional meeting, thinking from all different angles of how she can dress so that she can make a good impression, as if she's making up for being an East Indian woman, because the person she's meeting with that she wants to impress is a white man. But Jed just doesn't get her approach to this as if it's a mental block for her, rather than an actual adaptation she's used to work through racism that she experiences. But she's showing that these misunderstandings and conversations don't only happen with strangers, it's also people that love you, people still come from different worlds, have to work through these problems that arise from having different life experiences. So during the first part of the conversation, Jacob had asked Jed for space to take a minute and think, because what he said hurt her so much she needed to process it, and kind of stung. She had to just be quiet in a room on her own. Sometimes that's what we need to do, and then we can come back to the topic. So she says about shameful conversations, I just wanted to show the truth of it, which is that we mess up all the time. We also come back into these rooms with that shame and with the hardness between us and talk about it. We finally do get to hear what Jacob's friends have to say about Donald Trump, because she is still feeling frustrated that her parents-in-law are unbothered in supporting him despite his blatant racism, and she wants to kind of vent and talk to her friends about it. So one of the friends says about Z, when it comes to racism showing up in society and his life, it's all turning into one big question in his mind. How could it not? Jacob reflects on how she can use similar experiences. She can cause similar experiences of racism that others cause for her when she projects her prejudice onto other people. For example, she tells a story about projecting her prejudice that a black man she was dating at the time was uneducated. Answering Z's questions all the time makes her think even more than she usually would about what her values really are and how she shows up in the world. It was important for me to explore both how people implicated me, but also how I implicated other people. That's Jacob talking about how talking to Z kind of made her realize that she's not always one of the good guys. There's not necessarily good guys and bad guys, that she can make other people feel this uncomfortable feeling as well, and that she has to make sure that she's thinking harder about how she's thinking of other people if she's projecting onto them. We can all take some time to look at ourselves, find ways to let go of our prejudices, understand who people are rather than who we think they are, support our friends and loved ones, and when a child asks us a question, find an answer that offers them as much truth as necessary, balanced with care for their vulnerable emotions. For more context, this is Mira Jacob speaking about her book, Good Talk, in these videos.